Hello everyone, and welcome to Full-on, your Fulham-centric football podcast. I'm your host, Ash Woolford. Joining me today are both the Jacks. Mozza, how you doing, buddy?
I'm really good. Very positive about keeping alive in our cup final against Brentford this weekend.
And AJ, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm doing personally okay. Football-wise, no. Let's not. I'd say let's not talk football, but that's exactly why we're here, unfortunately.
It's the only reason why we're here, unfortunately. Yeah, we're not here for a mother's meeting. We're here to talk about the sadness that is watching Fulham at the moment. Um, Naturally, we are here obviously to talk about the West London derby on the weekend. But before we do, we just wanted to take a quick break from that. Some sad news coming out of the Fulham family today with the passing of Cliff Dean that was announced by some of his family earlier on. Cliff, who anyone who's been going to Fulham would have known and met him, absolutely lovely man, proper gentle giant. I can't really describe all of the times I've met him because it would be going on forever, and I'd probably mention some stuff that would get us in trouble. Cliff, he was a Fulham through and through, absolutely diehard Fulham fan. Cut him and he bled black and white, be that for Fulham or his other love of London Broncos. I know that his family are all massive Fulham fans as well. And our condolences from everyone at Ful-on go to everyone in the Dean family and anyone who was friends with Cliff. Yeah, he was an absolutely gent of a man. Often seen at Fulham when he was there with a beer in hand and his bag for life carrier bag in the other. Um, an absolute gent, and he will be missed. It is one of those occasions as a Fulham fan that we often sit here and we talk about the Fulham family and we think about them and and we are quite a close knit small family club at times, and these are the moments when sort of that comes to fruition. Anyone who's seen it on Twitter today would have seen the messages that the family have been sent, and there's not a single bad word that I've seen anyone have to say about Cliff. He's an absolute gent. Uh, and we, as a Fulham family, the Dean family, obviously naturally have lost someone huge. But as far as football goes, Fulham have lost a proper cornerstone of a fan, and hopefully, we can get a win this weekend in his memory. He will surely, he'll be properly missed, and as I say, from everyone at Full-on, we do fully give our condolences to the family. And we say that Cliff Dean will be missed, and we do dedicate this show in his honour. And at the end of the show, rather than our usual sort of outro, we do have a sort of memory of him. So, anyone who's sort of watching the show who was unaware of that, we are obviously sadly to say you found out. But Cliff is a lovely man, and he will be missed. Lads, let's get on with what we're here to do, and obviously let's talk about the Brentford game coming up this weekend. It's a really difficult game, really difficult moment for Fulham at the minute. We are going in playing against a team that have probably been on some of their best form of the season, considering that they have probably had a bit of an upturn in their fortunes compared to us. They had a bit of a blip earlier on in the season where they had a problem where we're going through now with a lot of injuries and a lot of players missing and a squad that's looking a bit broken up. They're finishing strong, and we are not finishing strong. We had this discussion on Monday when we spoke about the club and sort of the last 2 months being quite painful. AJ, we've had a few discussions around about squads and what we should expect. It's a difficult one, this one, because as much as the season isn't fully over, Europe is still mathematically possible for us, although it does look very minute of a chance for that to happen. So because of that, I don't expect to see loads and loads of changes. But what are you expecting to see sort of this weekend from Fulham squad-wise?
I think we're going to have to see wholesale changes for a couple of reasons. Players nursing injuries or not being fully fit, as well as just the fact that we've continued to plough on the same rhythm over and over again and are continuing to get similar results. And I think a 3-1 loss at home to Everton, which ultimately was our own undoing, should be a big enough slap in the face for Marco Silva to realise that you can't leave it up to Sander Berge on his own in that midfield, and whether or not that means he either goes back to what happened when Sander Berge was out and unavailable and drops to a back five to shore up the defence, because he thinks that we're going to get outrun in midfield regardless of who we put in it, or whether or not it means that we see more minutes for the likes of Kearney. I'm really not sure. But if Lukic is still out injured, if Reed is still out injured, and we're going to have to rely on Berge, Smith Rowe, and and Andreas in that midfield three, we may as well say that we've lost the midfield battle already before we even kick a ball, frankly. So I expect him to not be silly enough to go into the game with that sort of mentality. We might see a return to Iwobi in the 8, just because of our shortness on players, and then Sessegnon on one of the wings to shore up the defence a little bit more and give support because of how direct and fast and attacking Brentford can be. But I don't think that we'll be daft enough to start both ESR and Andreas again, unless it's one of them as a support striker and one of them in midfield in a 5 at the back system.
Yeah, it's a difficult one really, because this is one of those games where the Brentford we're going to play on Sunday is not the same as the Brentford that we played at the Cottage earlier on in the season. We were all really sort of shocked by the way that Brentford approached the game at the Cottage early on in the season, which we know we got away with a win in the end, but they were very standoffish. They were very, un-Brentford like, un-Thomas Frank like in the way that they played. And I know it's sort of a bit sacrilege as a Fulham fan to say, but Thomas Frank has Brentford playing decent football, and they have a very good, young, fast attacking squad. And it's exactly what we don't really want to be facing at the moment when you think about it, the way that we've been defending and the way that we've been a bit vulnerable to the attack of late. Mozza, Brentford are a really tough opponent for us to play. We've had 2 or 3 months of really, really sort of lethargic, disappointing football from Fulham. I say mathematically, Europe's not off the cards, but if we're being honest with ourselves, it probably is. How do we want to finish this season? How do we approach this game, especially to make sure that we're at least finishing the season with our heads held high, rather than sitting there ruin what has been a complete waste of the last couple of months?
Blimey, very good question. I think we've already lost this game before we've even turned up. That's how I feel, at least anyway. And I don't think I can be blamed, or if anyone else feels the same from the way that we have played. You look at Brentford, they've won 4 of their last 5 games. You're quite right. They're playing the squad, the players that they're putting out, youngsters, for example, that's exactly what we want. I mean, whoever thought Fulham fans would be saying we want to be like Brentford at the moment? Brentford have got something to play for. Right? They're in the exact position that we hoped we would be in the table. You look at it, 8th place, sitting in 11th. They've got something to play for. They've got something to prove. Yes, it might matter to still get to Europe, but I'm not holding my breath. It's just one of those things where I'm completely resigned to the fact that it's not going to happen. And I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. But what else have we got to play for? It's near the end of the season. I don't really want to go to the last couple of games. I mean, obviously, I won't be going to Brentford away, but even like our last home game, I don't want to go to. Even if you look at the amount of fans that were leaving the stadium when we were losing to Everton, I think that's just a massive sign of how much the fans have given up at this point. And I hate to be a pessimist, but what have we got left as a club, as a team, to play for? If we get Europe, is it going to be worth it? Is that just going to give us more problems come the summer? Also, what players have to go in? Who's going to be clearing off? I mean, we heard today that Kearney's probably going to go to Wrexham, and yeah, all the best to him. I don't think he's someone that we need necessarily, but for example, if he's going to come on and get some minutes, what's he got to play for? Nothing. So yeah, it's the same thing we've always been saying. Get the youngsters on. Really, they're the only ones to prove because they want to get first team football. Is that going to happen? I don't see it happening. I don't see a change in the lineup from last game. So sorry to be negative, but those are my thoughts. I don't know what more we can do as a fan base to support our club and get behind them. But if you've got the strength to do it, any Fulham fans, tell me the secret, because I don't know.
Yeah, I think that realistically, this is a massive game for us, and we all like. I know that traditionally, Chelsea's always been the bigger game in the Premier League for us, West London wise, West London derby wise. It's always QPR well above both of those two, right? Brentford has become more and more of an important game, mainly because of how much they view this game as their big one. Their fans properly get up for this game. And we have to approach it as that's exactly it. It's a massive game on Sunday because not just because of what's in stake because of Europe, but because if Brentford qualify for Europe and they do it off the back of beating us at home, right, we won't hear the end of it. It will be the same as them singing about Morpay scoring in the last minute 7 years after it happened, and he's buggered off to Everton and he's been there for 3 years. Like, it'll be the same thing. Like, they won't let us live it down if that happens. So, there should be plenty there for the players to play for. A bit of pride. I think realistically, that's what should be left for the players to be playing for this season. There's an awful lot of players there that could probably look at playing for their futures. You look at players like Willian, who is he going to play for us again next season? Who knows? I hope not personally, but who knows? You talk about TC potentially going to Wrexham. That hasn't been confirmed nor denied, but realistically, he's probably not going to be at Fulham at the end of the season. You look at the 3 players that announced today that obviously Fulham have signed up again for next year in Wilson, Adama Traore and Raul. I'm a bit, on the fence about a couple of those being renewed, mainly because of the amount of money they're on. And if we're going to improve, we need to be signing players to play in their positions already. So it's a bit difficult with that. I think we can worry about that when the season ends and where we look squad wise. But for the game on Sunday, there should be no bigger sort of inspiration to do well as a set of players than it will keep Brentford fans shut for a little bit. It's difficult for us to say and sit here and go, like, realistically, where Brentford are in the league table right now is where we should be. If we hadn't had the last, 2 months that we've had, it's exactly where we would be. And we've only got ourselves to blame that we're now at this league table looking up rather than looking down at this fixture. What scares me is that, if our start of the season was what the end has been so far, we wouldn't be talked about in the light that we are by most people in the league. You look at Crystal Palace, right? Who, forget the fact they're playing an FA Cup final this weekend. They had an horrendous start to the season, an absolute horrendous start to the season. But they could finish above us still this season. And if Palace finish above us and get an FA Cup final after the start they've had, right, we should only look at that as a failure as a football club ourselves because of how much of a gap there was between us at one point. There's a lot of questions in the air at Fulham at the moment, be that playing squad, be that manager wise. We know that there's going to be a little bit of an overhaul coaching wise at Fulham during the summer because of Stuart Gray retiring. You know, we know there's going to be players leaving and starting, and these are all conversations that we'll have naturally in the next couple of weeks as a fan, as a fan base. But you know, it's scary to think where we're going into it. AJ, what more motivation can the players have going into this game? You know, what should their mindset actually be going into this one, just because of who we're playing, not necessarily what we're playing for?
I think it'll actually benefit them not having a mindset for this one. In the same way that every other game that we've written off in the past, we've somehow shown up for. The Arsenals, the Liverpools, the United in the Cup, for example. We went into every single one of those going, yeah, we've lost. May as well just call it. Like, I had to do a podcast in my underwear because we beat Liverpool, for fuck's sake. Like, that's how much we had written it off. It's this Brentford game, even though the opposition aren't as big as those as that, the game has the same feeling around it. It's a write off. There's no point. We've lost before we've kicked the ball. Fuck it. It doesn't matter. And I think taking that pressure off of the players will be why we get a performance out of them. Not because it's a local derby, not because it's a game against Brentford, not because it's bragging rights for the London derby. Because if that were the case, we wouldn't have fucking bottled it against Chelsea, who we consider a much bigger rival within our club. Sorry, Brentford, we do than we do with Brentford anyway. So I think it's going to be a case of the players aren't feeling any pressure for this game because they've already bottled it. So at this point, they can just show up.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, you know, and it'll be interesting to see where we lie coming into this one. I've just got a sneaking suspicion that Marco might shake the squad up a little bit going into this game. I don't know why. I don't know what it is. You know, knowing my luck with that feeling, that'll just be he'll shake up the bench a little bit, and we might, you know, see a little bit different. The only thing that I sort of definitely want to see in this one is I want to see Goddo and King getting some more minutes on the pitch. We're going to need that youthful exuberance in Brentford, especially when they get on top of games at the Gtech, especially because they can be very attacking, they can be very fast flowing, and they can be very very in your face as a football club, and especially when they're at home, and we're going to need to be able to counter attack. And unfortunately for us, pace is not one of those things that we have in abundance. We have one very fast player, which proves to be a bit of a downfall for us sometimes because the rest of the squad can't keep up with him. So we need a little bit of sort of some youthful exuberance on. I want to see Callum Osman actually get in the squad this week. You know, Vinicius Junior isn't going to be playing for Fulham. So Vinicius Junior, if only Carlos Vinicius, right, will not be playing for Fulham next season, right? And before anyone messaged in, I did that on purpose. Like, he will not be playing for Fulham next season, so don't put him on the bench. Don't even put him on the matchday squad. You know, yes, he's getting paid stupid amount of money to still be at Fulham. I don't care. Get the young players in and let them have a go, because you know they'll go into this game and the youthfulness will probably help get them through it too. You know, it will be a very difficult game, and you know, I have a lot of respect for the job that Thomas Frank's done at Brentford. I hate the fact he's done it at Brentford, obviously, naturally. But I have a lot of respect for the job that they do. It just annoys me that, you know, the way our season has ended, what should have been us going to Brentford away to secure a spot in Europe is now us looking like we're going to give them a space in Europe, which is rather disappointing. Lads, let's finish this one out. We always finish them, right? I know that none of us want to give scoreline predictions for this one, but we can give sort of. I think we're all sort of leaning where this is going to end results wise. But as always, can I get a player to watch from both teams for you both, please? Mozza, I'll start with you. Give us a player to watch and who will win.
I'm going to do it in a different order. I'm going to give my scoreline first, so hopefully it makes sense. Unfortunately, I've got a feeling this has 3-0 Brentford written all over it. So my player to watch for us for that reason is Bernd Leno. Old, what did you call him? Pancake wrists or Poppadom wrists?
Just Poppadom wrists, yeah.
Poppadom wrists. Yeah, there you go. Either or. I think there might be some trouble from the old long range shots that he has been having. And I agree with what AJ was saying earlier about the lineups. Our midfield, I think, is very, very weak at the moment. So I think we'll get a lot of trouble from Brentford in their midfields with Mbeumo and Wissa, if they're assuming they're available. And I would not wish that they are injured at all. But there you go.
Yeah, I can understand exactly where you're coming from there. AJ, what about you, mate?
I think it's going to be Sander Berge to watch because of the reasons that I stated earlier and what Mozza's just alluded to. The midfield battle is going to be huge, and if he is left on his own, it's going to be an absolute nightmare. Thomas Frank is unfortunately the sort of manager that would have looked at that Everton game, saw where the game shift, and seen why, and he's likely to try and implement something similar. He's a very tactically able manager and is someone that will review game tapes from previous fixtures on the best way to exploit us, which is what you could arguably say that he tried to do in the reverse fixture, because as you said, it was very anti-Brentford, but it was the exact type of tactics that have had other teams beat us this season regularly. 2 90-plus minute goals from Wilson to change that doesn't mean that what they were doing was the wrong idea, because it almost worked, frankly. So I don't think they will actually be as on the front foot as we were expecting them to be. I think they might let us have quite a bit of the ball, but I think they will have learnt from that Everton game and will double up on Berge if we haven't got another midfielder to support him, even if that midfielder is someone like Kenny, because they will be aware that Kenny will be able to pick up the ball and play passes around their press, which Berge can't do on his own. So it's highly dependent on what happens with that midfield. Thus, Sander Berge is my player to watch. Score prediction, I've said on Twitter, if anyone's seen it, that the likelihood is that we'll lose one more game to match equal. So we've got a matching win-loss record, and we'll draw one more game to make sure that it stays that way. I think this is the game that we draw. I think it's going to be 1-1. I don't think there's going to be an awful lot in it. I think it will be similar to the reverse fixture. Brentford might go a goal up, sit deep on their laurels, and we might get some sort of luck out of someone like Ryan Sessegnon. And then obviously it means us losing at City, which is
no shock really. But I think realistically going into this one, I'm quite. There's a lot of negativity around the fan base at the moment, right? We all really felt it on Monday that anyone who watched our review of the Everton game would have felt the absolute, radiation of negativity that was coming from all four of us when we were reviewing that game. That hasn't subsided for me this week. We're not finishing this season in a way that,
we were 4 points off Champions League places, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, like it doesn't. Yeah. But it's not the way we're finishing this. The way we're whimpering out really irks me. I think I'm literally on the seesaw of disappointment and anger. And it's one of those ones where like I can't quite work out where my emotions lie on it. Players to watch going into this game. Mozza, you're right with Leno. I was really disappointed with him last week, right? After being really disappointed with him over the last couple of months, because he's a goalkeeper I admire and I really like. But I'm starting to see the negative sides of him quite more regularly than I wish to. Then you look at the other areas of the pitch where we're going to really have to be strong in this game. Defensively, Calvin Bassey and Anderson are going to have a really good game on Sunday. Brentford do not fuck around when it comes to how quick they attack. Mbeumo, as much as everyone who supports Fulham probably hates to say it, is probably one of the best players that outside of the top sort of big clubs in the Premier League. and I would have him at Fulham in a heartbeat. That's how much I rate him. He's
Oh,
a great, great player. Um, you have to look at you have to look at other players in that squad and be worried about it. But Mbeumo's the one who really worries me, Brentford wise. Fulham wise, I've got a funny feeling this is going to be one of those games where Raul's really going to have to be on it, and I don't just mean it in the sense of his connection play and his hold up play, because he's been doing that brilliantly lately. He's going to have to be a bit more selfish going forward. He's going to have to be a bit more attack minded and a little less trying to play the ball on minded and actually trying to get in the box, because we're going to have to be really clinical on Sunday. We're going to get anything out of the game, because Brentford don't give away many chances, and we're going to have to hope that this is just one of those games where every now and then they just don't turn up. But the way they finished this season so far, and the way they're finishing this season, it won't be this weekend, because they've been absolutely superb of late, and it is one of those things. Scoreline wise, I just got a sneaky suspicion that Brentford win this, and I was going to say 2-1, but I feel like it'll be a lot more comfortable 2-1 Brentford than it will be, than that sounds. Anything will probably score like a last minute consolation or something like that, and that'll be it. So there's no real joy going into it. I don't really have much more to add to it other than that, hopefully Fulham can do what Fulham have done a few times this season, and we've been really negative in games and going into games, and Fulham have proved us wrong. We'll see how that goes. Lads, there's not really much more to talk about on this one, is there? We'll be back early next week for the review of this one. Mozza, obviously, I don't think you're with us for this review, but we'll see how that goes. Hopefully, Fulham can prove you wrong on it. There's, as I say, not much more to say. Thank you very much for joining us on Ful-on. Thank you for joining us. This week, rather than having our usual outro, we have our memory for Cliff Dean on there. So please sit and enjoy that. If you have any memories of Cliff, feel free to share them on the video. Pass them over. And again, as we said earlier on, we do send our condolences to the Dean family, and Fulham really have lost a massive cornerstone of the fan base with Cliff being gone. So, with that being said, hope you all have a good weekend. Hopefully Fulham can pull something out of the bag, and we'll see you all soon. Come on, you Whites.